Welcome back to Nourishing Maine. I'm Mary Kate Rennie.
And I'm Marge Kilkelly, and we're here at Dragonfly Cove Farm and delighted to have a guest with us, Kevin Kelly, who works with the Maine Lobstermen's Association and on the Save the Maine Lobstermen campaign and the Director of Advancement. And we are delighted to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, welcome, Kevin.
You're absolutely, and you forgot one important point. The son of a lobsterman.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
It is important.
It is important. It's such an important part of our economy, especially here in coastal Maine, and we really want to talk about celebrating it because this is our New Year's show, and what a great way to bring in the new year to have lobster and celebrate Maine and culture and everything else.
Lobster is on the menu on plates in Maine and across the country, around the world actually.
Yeah, all
and
year,
especially at the holidays.
and all year long, for sure.
And lobstering happens all year long.
It does.
Which is something that I think people don't understand. Is it's one thing in August when the sea is completely calm and everything's lovely, but it's harder to go out this time of year.
It's one of the most dangerous jobs, and in fact, in the winter, you have to go further offshore. So you're usually fishing at least 3 miles offshore, but up to 200 miles out there. So.
And growing up with a fisherman, you know this. Yeah.
My dad was more inshore, so he fished in Muscungus Bay, and only on good days in the summer and before noon.
Good choices.
Well, thanks to the lobsterman who brought us these, or who caught these for us.
So we want to talk about lobster and all the way from the beginning where the lobster are caught and then you purchase the lobster. And so a couple of things about purchasing a lobster. One is you want to make sure that the lobster is moving around and alive, which if you're buying it from a local lobster dealer, you can be sure they are. These came from Cantrell's. And
Mine came from Delano's in Waldoboro.
Yep, so great folks to go visit. And you hold it this way to make sure that you aren't going to get pinched. The other piece about lobster that we feel very strongly about is it's great to have rubber bands on them, but you don't want to cook with rubber bands. I don't cook anything else with rubber, so I'm not going to cook my wonderful, delicious lobster with rubber bands. And the safest way to take those off is just with a knife. Boom, and there it goes. And they do sometimes spring right away. And now it's especially important to be holding it this way.
And can we tell if it's a hard shell or soft shell at this point? What's the clue?
Well, I mean,
You can tell by touching.
And
Yeah,
by
that's a hard
the
shell.
wear and tear on the claws. My husband told me this clue. So if there's some dents and some scrapes, he's probably ready to molt, or she. And so this one definitely looks pretty rugged.
Yep. It's saying, excuse me.
He's saying, don't touch. He's very feisty. He's a good one.
So now we get into the next part of lobster.
And Kevin was telling us earlier that the color makes a big difference. And what were you going to say about customers?
I was saying it's actually funny how many lobsters are how many complaints you receive from people around the world who receive a lobster that color live, but they don't know that it's alive. They think it's dead because it's not this color. This is what
the marketing
this
color.
is what people think a lobster looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And imagine if they look like that on the seafloor, there probably wouldn't be many of them left because they wouldn't be able
They're
to
not
hide
moving.
anywhere. So, taking apart a lobster, which is the next piece. I always take the claws off first, and then the tail.
And it really is as simple as a twist at this point.
We could have a race.
We could. And then we take off these little fanned fins that they move around with. You are much quicker than I am, Marge, on this part.
What's your favorite part of a lobster?
I'm going to say claws. Although the knuckle meat is delicious too. Sometimes it's hard to get at when it's a hard shell. But it is a race and Marge is winning.
I've been Doing
This is where bibs
long-
can come in, and I know Marge is not about the bib. It's like
Dragonfly Cove Farm is a bib-free zone. We've had people from all over the world come here and eat lobster and ask for a bib. It's like, no, we don't do that here.
You have to wear it.
That's right. Or just be careful.
Well, I said this is the part that my mom is really good at, so we let her do all of this work.
So you are watching. You're taking notes, right, Kevin?
We say, Mom, you're doing a great job.
Well, that's good. Appreciation is good.
It's a lot faster.
So with the claw, I take off this
Yep.
piece of the claw. And how did you? And then this is the knuckle meat I mentioned. This little piece in here. It's harder to get, and you need a pick. Sometimes these are soft shell, and you just cracked your
There,
claw.
see?
Soft shells. And there's another discussion we can have about lobster is what's your preference, a soft shell or a hard shell? I mean, this is such a great moment. Look at
And
this
when we
claw.
say soft shell, we just mean new shell.
Right.
Because it just means that the lobster has
meat.
molted. And actually, we've got that little bowl over there.
We do.
We can
We'll
put the
that
meat
there.
in.
Yeah.
Speaking of debates, there's debate up and down the coast over where you catch the best lobster. Well. And of course, people around here say Muscogis Bay because the lobster is sweeter.
I didn't know there was any question.
Yeah, but I think it's because of the different water temperatures.
Oh, I bet you're right.
Along the coast.
Sure.
So.
I think one of the other things that's important about lobster in Maine is that I wrote a piece a while ago that 150 years ago, when my great-grandfather was lobstering, is when some of the first regulations went in terms of the size of lobster that Maine lobstermen could keep. And that's really important because it is a sustainable fishery.
Absolutely.
And and not only is the lobster itself regulated, but there's been a lot of work around how how bycatch is managed, and it's really critical for people to understand that.
And lobstermen themselves are actually the ones who came up with the regulations.
Yeah, that's true.
And started self-regulating before the state even adopted the official rules.
That is,
So,
Yeah.
and that makes perfect sense. They know what they need. They know what matters.
Right.
Yeah.
And they regulate themselves often
Yep.
too. So the Department of Marine Resources obviously oversees the fishery, but on a daily basis, if you're not following the rules, the lobstermen know who's
Who's not.
who's not playing
Yeah.
by the rules.
And as you're pulling out the lobster meat, there is going to be some of this white
Material,
goo, and you don't want to have that in your lobster roll or your stew. So, and there's other things in here.
And now, do you eat the tamale?
I do.
I don't, but I do think it's a good ingredient for making a base for the lobster stew. Is that right?
It's also wonderful. This is liver. It's just liver. And you take the lobster liver, mix it with some mayonnaise, and use it on a cracker, and then put lobster on top of it. Delightful. There it is. And it's green, and everybody goes, oh my goodness, it's green. But it's liver. It's okay. Really. It's delicious. Try it.
And some people like it, and some people don't.
And that's okay
It
too.
is okay, but at least you now know what it is.
And the other part that needs to be cleaned in a lobster is the piece here. There's a piece that covers up this, and you want to take off the black line that's in there, and then and then you can break it in half so nicely. It just turns into really lovely pieces of lobster that will go into our stew and our lobster rolls.
And to that, there's a lot of other meat on this lobster that you don't want to have to go to waste.
I bet there's a Joe way for that.
I bet there is.
Welcome to Joe's Way. We're celebrating the lobster today, and everybody loves lobster. And when they get done, you end up with a pot like this. And I'm here to show you my way of making use of that. If we take a leg and put it on a board and just roll it out with a rolling pin, you end up with a chunk of meat that just slides right out. Some people like to chew on them. That doesn't work for me. Some people just take them and throw them away. But my way is the better way. Not only do you do the legs this way, but the tail, you can take two of there's 5 fins on a tail, take 2 of them, separate it, and peel the little knuckle off, and you can pull out a good chunk of meat. And if you're at a good lobster bake, there will be plenty of these, legs, etc. And if you do a bunch, you can get an extra lobster roll. And I just like the way the meat just pushes right out of them. And that's the Joe way. Have a happy new year.
Thanks, Joe. Now there's lots of extra meat for our stew and lobster rolls.
Absolutely, nothing should go to waste.
Not at all.
Great. But then the question is there anything about a lobster you can't eat?
Shell.
True.
That's true. You know, our chickens like the shells a lot, though. But when there's a lot of meat in the body of the lobster, and then there's, like this part very at the top, which isn't edible, or there isn't anything there. But there's a lot of meat in the body, and you just break it apart, and you just pick through, and you find all kinds of meat in there as well.
And if you don't want to just toss this in the trash, again, you can use it as a base for a broth for the lobster stew, and then toss it all out after you've strained the broth out of that.
So I'm going to start our lobster stew, and while I'm doing that, in a bit, you folks can work on lobster rolls. How's that?
Terrific.
That's good.
So the lobster stew, I take about 2 cups of broth. So when we boiled the lobsters, I saved some of the broth, we strained it, and that's what I'm going to cook. Our 2 cups of potatoes and our 1+ cup of onions, because we all know that I like onions a lot. And while those are cooking in the broth, I'm going to saute the lobster meat in butter. And it's really fun. One of my old cookbooks in parentheses said, "No substitute, must be butter," which of course it must be butter.
No margarine.
No margarine.
Or olive oil.
But sauteing the lobster meat in butter is what gives a lobster stew that gorgeous red color that is really, really important for a lobster. So. Well, I'm getting the stew ready, and you do the rolls, and then we will have a party.
Sounds
That's
great.
good.
We'll start chopping up the lobster. I've got a beautiful tail here. You've got
And
the
I
claw.
have got the claw.
Yay. Unlike the stew, although the stew isn't too complicated, it's sophisticated but not too complicated, this is even easier.
Right.
Once you've cooked the lobsters and the meat is chilled, it's a matter of cutting it into the size pieces that you like the best, and then adding either mayonnaise,
Or butter.
and it's a controversy for the ages, but I always go with mayo. And you can even add celery, or parsley.
Parsley,
Yeah,
yep.
okay, I'm not alone. And then I don't know what another ingredient would be.
I've used lemon juice.
Oh, that would be good in
Yep,
the
you can-
end.
Yep.
That's great. So lobsters, there's been a lot of controversy around lobstering in the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I think challenges to the lobster industry have been around as long as the lobster industry has been around.
It is just a matter of the time we're
but
in.
the past few years have been particularly difficult. In addition to low prices and the high cost of just doing business, one particular challenge has been the federal regulations that oversee the industry and the well-intentioned rules to protect the endangered northern right whale.
Right.
But the unintended consequences of those rules. So the Maine Lobstermen's Association has been working for the past couple of years on that issue, and most recently won an appeals court decision that allows the lobster industry to continue under the current rules while new rules are worked out that hopefully will protect the whale. And
the Maine Lobstermen's Association had a lot to do with that.
yeah, the Maine Lobstermen's Association
That's-
filed the lawsuit
that's
to
fabulous.
to be the voice of the lobstermen in this case.
And I know that my brother-in-law, for one, a fabulous lobsterman, he's, not only are folks aging out, but I think some of the lobstermen who love doing it, whether it's seasonal like your dad, they're deciding to get out of it for the regulations you mentioned, but also the expense of fuel.
Yeah.
And then the regulations on top of that.
Yep.
And so that's just losing the older generations and all that experience is a big deal.
We've had a lot, I would say several older lobstermen who say they're actually not encouraging their children to get into the industry because of the amount of regulations and the costs. It's a hard way to make a living. But
is a hard
it's
way.
been a way to make a living in Maine for, a century. So we don't want to see that go away.
We don't. And are there current ways to sell your boat to upcoming lobstermen? Is there a, I know that the fleet is, was one of the ways that I think organizations were trying to help with the costs.
Yeah. So there are 7 management zones along the coast, from Kittery to Cutler, essentially the Canadian border.
Oh.
And they each have their individual rules. So they regulate the number of traps that are fished in that area and how many licensed lobstermen there are in a certain zone. So there are long wait lists for licenses along the state,
Well, that's
along the
good
coast.
news.
So yeah, so as lobstermen age out, they would turn their license back over to the state so that somebody on the waiting list could
Oh.
get into the industry. So it's all part of that conservation record that the industry has, regulating themselves to protect the resource for the future.
And to prevent overfishing.
Exactly.
I did not know they recycled the licenses
Yeah.
as a way
Yeah.
of sustaining it.
And that's different with, in federal waters, it's different. You can sell your federal license, but most licensed lobstermen in Maine are inshore licensed lobstermen. Yeah, so there are about 5,000 licensed lobstermen in the state.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
And is there a cluster of, is there a higher amount of lobstermen in the southern Maine or down east?
The mid-coast region, I think, is the highest number, but usually there's about 1,000, 1,500 licensed lobstermen in each zone.
That is great. So the good news, that's great news. And then the other great news that we were talking about is the value added
Yeah.
products and things. So this is an example. It's
A
a,
skincare line. It's a new company based in Portland, I think, but they are recycling, or I guess reusing, the lobster shells.
this is a lip treatment and this is a skin treatment and a hydration cream. Using lobster shells mostly.
Yep, using lobster shells, because typically people throw this away, right? Or compost in their
At the end
gardens
they
or
do.
whatever. But there are companies that make garden fertilizer,
Right.
soil. But I was actually talking to someone not too long ago, and they said they're working on technology that will actually recycle all of these shells. And one day the lobster shell might actually be worth more than the lobster meat itself.
No
So there's
Because of all the different vitamins
right.
and uses
Yeah,
and
exactly,
emulsifiers that
so
there are in there. That is
we'll
really
see-
good news.
We'll see over the next few years.
Yeah, we will.
what
That's
comes of that.
exciting. Great. Well, we have to get chopping. I don't like mine too chunky.
Oh, I do.
Well, there you go. So this is Kevin's butter bowl in it, and he's going to add hot butter. And then I am going to use mayonnaise for mine. So if you like, if you're done,
Yep.
you can start your
Okay.
building your sandwich
Perfect.
or roll. And I need some more. I bet you do too.
I have toasted rolls for you guys.
And then if you're ready, pour your butter in there.
We'll do it this way.
Yeah, perfect. And then I can reach over and get some rolls.
What, toasted?
Yes, toasted rolls.
Oh, toasted rolls, hot off the grill.
Hot off the grill. And then when it's to your satisfaction,
Perfect.
you can load it up and we can put them in here. Here, I'll put that there.
See if that one's done. See if those potatoes are done.
I can make one for Marge and for Joe.
That's
I
so
think
nice of you.
I think Marge is a Mayo lobster roll mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I love in the summer you see the challenges at the businesses along the coast. Who has the best lobster roll, right? Like, everyone's vying for that title.
Well, and everyone's is the best. It's where you are. I think it's going to be the best one. Great. So I'm going to add my amount that I like into the lobster and stir it up. I don't go really heavy with the mayo because, as we always say, you can add more, you just can't take it out. And it's really just about making the sweetness of the lobster pop with the mayo and creamy. So that's pretty much how I like it.
It's good.
And I need a toasted roll from you, Marge.
All right. They are ready. These are I really, really like toasted rolls for lobster rolls.
Those look
And it has to be the hot dog roll.
It has to be not only the hot dog roll, but the hot dog roll that opens at the top. Critical piece.
Again, it's that thing. Do you like butter or mayo? And rolls. I mean, we do judge a lobster pound by what kind of bread they use.
The other thing, when we were talking about if we wanted like fancy rolls to put, we thought the real purpose of the roll is to make it easy to get the lobster from the bowl to your mouth.
Right.
It's like a delivery system.
That's why lobster salad is born.
But what I did was just put some butter on the outside and put it in a iron pan and let it go.
Yeah,
So
grilling
there
it
you
is
go.
the way. Thank you, Marge.
You're welcome.
I'll make 2 with mayo.
So seeing this lobster here, it actually reminds me that in January 2025, new rules are going into
No kidding.
effect that will actually increase the size of the smallest keeper lobster. So that's all part of the conservation effort. There's been some numbers that show the population of juvenile lobsters in Maine is actually decreasing faster than they had expected. So
Is
it
that
has-
right? So when you measure, and I have been on a lobster boat, when you
Right.
measure the size
Yep.
of the lobster, so will those rules require a lengthening of the
Gauge.
iron?
Yep, the gauge, yep.
That you hook into there
It'll-
and measure if it's a keeper or not.
It will go from 3 1/4 to 3 1/3.
Yeah.
So,
So if you look here, what's another fun fact about a lobster?
well, you can tell whether it's a male or female.
And which fin?
Well, that's a really good question.
I think it's this
There, I
one.
think you're right.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
soft feathery fins at the very bottom of the carapace here. This is how you determine whether it's a male or a female lobster. And the softer the feathery feel is a female lobster.
And also, if lobstermen catch an egg-bearing female, they V-notch its tail. So
So does it have to be on?
I think it's on the right
so
side,
that
yeah.
this, oh, is it on the right
I
side?
think it's on the right.
So we've all heard, I think, that lobstermen can't keep a short lobster, and so they don't have to notch it then, of course. They're just putting it back in the ocean.
Right.
But if it's a female,
That has eggs.
so it has to
Yeah.
have eggs on its underbelly
Right.
when they do catch it. They have to, by law, notch the tail. And
Right.
you said it's to the right of it?
To the right, I think so. So that, therefore, any other lobsterman that catches that egg-bearing female, whether she has eggs or not, they know that she's able to reproduce.
Oh.
So they put her back in the ocean so that she can do her job and hopefully bring the lobster population back up. So.
Yeah, so if a lobsterman catches a female and it's notched and she has no eggs, she cannot be caught.
Right.
Got
You
it.
throw her back into
You
the
throw
ocean.
her back in the ocean.
Yep. Just as you do the oversized lobster that is bigger than that 3 1/4 right now. You throw that back into
Oh,
the
so
ocean.
I
as
didn't
well,
know.
so
3 1/4
inches.
inches
yeah.
of the body.
carapace, yeah.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know that was
Yeah.
the limit.
Yeah.
That's a
So-
big lobster.
Exactly. And what is this, about a pound?
Very
Pound, a
good.
pound and a
Yeah,
quarter,
mine. The hard shell I got was a pound lobster. Yeah. So let me finish making this sandwich up. I'm gonna go a little. You went kind of.
Light? You think?
You went
maybe
light
some
on
more?
yours.
Okay.
That- There we go.
I'm always afraid that I'm going to break the bun.
Like two
Right.
bite finish. There we go. Okay. A little bit of green would be beautiful on the top of this, but we eat them too quickly for that to happen, usually. But for New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, it's such a treat to have lobster. And this is an easy way to do it, more casual way.
People are going to
that's
make.
great.
I broke my bun. People are going to
You
make fun of me.
did. Well, you put it in the right direction. Yeah. And the stew should be ready. I'm betting.
We're getting there. So I'm gonna add the lobster and the sautéed lobster and butter into the broth and potatoes. The potatoes are all nicely cooked right now. And then add some heavy cream because why not? It's New Year's. Works for me.
And I have a question, and I'm not sure if you know, the difference between a lobster stew and a bisque. I thought it was the heavy cream, but maybe there's other ingredients. Do you know, Marge?
I don't think bisque doesn't have meat in it.
Right, I
Bisque
think
is
that's
just the
right.
broth.
The broth.
Is like the creamy broth.
I made that mistake once. I ordered lobster bisque.
And you were
then
so
asked,
disappointed.
Where's
You're
the
like,
lobster?
that would be my move.
And that just needs to sit for a minute over the heat, and we will be ready to have a party.
Great.
And
A New Year's celebration.
So there we go.
Looks delicious.
Look at the color on there.
Isn't that
Orange.
wonderful?
It is.
It's just, and that's the way to make the color, is to really just saute that lobster meat over a low heat, and it just becomes absolutely lovely.
Orange.
There you go.
All right, I'll do the honors.
Okay.
So another decision to be made is, do you load it up heavy and then just a little bit of broth, or do you prefer the flavor?
I like the broth.
I do too. Same with haddock cheddar.
Yeah.
Especially when it
I'll
has
give you that.
cream in it.
Here, yes.
But good.
Amount of I think we're ready.
I think spoons are probably useful in this process.
Yes.
And I'm going to put the soup back on the stove.
That sounds like a good idea. And I'll bring the rolls forward. Talk about a New Year's Day treat. Right, well,
I think if we're going to have New Year's,
Here we go.
we should have a celebration
here's to 2024 with lobster.
and a good lobster harvest.
Happy
Yes.
New Year.
We can fake it.
There you go. So let's try the stew first, just because.
Fantastic.
Nice
Like
job.
sipping the sea.
It
It's like Maine farms and Maine sea come together. We've got great Maine potatoes, Maine cream, Maine butter. I mean, really.
Yeah.
And
And
then
my lobster roll with mayo.
there you go. Yes, with mayo. Some of us do mayo.
Now, is this an old family recipe?
In a way, I mean, I have a lot of historic cookbooks, and so I looked at all of those, but this is the way we made it growing up. Yeah,
It's delicious.
growing up in Booth Bay Harbor, you ate a lot of lobster.
You sure did.
Especially if your name was Brewer.
So as my dad used to say, we always knew it was a bad year if we were eating lobster because he lobstered to buy steak. So we knew he was doing well if we were having steak for dinner.
That's a great story.
So we love your Maine Lobstermen's Association, sure.
Thank you.
But we also want to make sure that you have a Nourishing Maine apron. And if your mom's picking out the lobster, you can let
She can
her
use it.
you can let her wear the apron.
She'll love it.
yeah.
But we're really glad you were here.
Well, thanks
It's
so
really
much.
Yeah,
helpful.
thanks for all the great information,
Well,
Kevin.
absolutely, and thank you for highlighting such an important industry to our state.
Here,
So
can I
just to
put this
give
over
you, just to review the recipe one more time, and it's very simple. Take the meat out of a boiled lobster, cut it into small pieces, save the broth from cooking those lobsters, and you take 2 cups of the meat and 2 cups of diced potato, a cup and a half of onions diced, and cook those onions and potatoes in that lobster broth to give it a really full flavor. While that's cooking, you want to be sauteing the lobster meat over a low heat with butter. And then you take that wonderful red buttery lobster and put it in with the potatoes and onions. Add heavy cream and milk to the consistency that you desire and enjoy.
The most important part.
The most important part.
And the lobster roll was as easy as it looked. Cook your lobster, refrigerate the meat, add either butter or mayo, stir it, and the amount is up to you. You can add celery or parsley, a little lemon splash at the top if you like that. Put it on a toasted roll, a top slit roll like this one, and and pack it as heavy as you want.
Thanks for joining us on Nourishing Maine, and I want to especially thank Kevin Kelly from the Maine Lobstermen's Association for joining us today to talk about this delicious food that nourishes our economy as well as nourishing our bodies. Happy New Year from Nourishing Maine.